I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a double or triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's episode, entitled Horror Anthology 501. As per tradition, the Grindhouse team partnered with our good friend the Ghoul of the Grindhouse to continue our curriculum of curated horror. We'll let the Ghoul take it away.
Hello, kiddies. It's me, the Ghoul of the Grindhouse. I've got my diploma and graduated with honors. Now I'm ready to take on post-maduate school with another collection of terrifying tales. 5 ferocious folklore fables from the Far East are cleverly curated in a creepy collection. A disgusting disgrace of a dude has a deadly dalliance with a dreadful dew. A silly spouse lets a secret slip and soon finds himself separated from his specter of a sweetheart. An earless entertainer who can really bebop on the biwa attracts the attention of an army of apparitions. And all these chronicles coalesce in a cup of terrorific tea. Tatsuya Nakadai and Takashi Screamura star in Masaki Kobayashi's 1964 classic, Kwaidan. This unofficial shriekwell to the British Tales from the Crypt delivers 5 startling stories from the basement of a corpse rise. A brother and sister's argument taps into something deep in his neck. Meanwhile, a neat freak gets just the organization he needs. A magician trying to steal someone else's trick soon finds himself at the end of his rope. A pair of friends try to pull off an insurance scam together, but you know what they say? 2 deads are better than 1. And an artist learns a magic spell that really puts the pain in painting. Dead Home Elliot and Terror Thomas star in Roy Ward Baker's 1975 film, The Vault of Horror. A sinister series of spine-chilling sagas supersized from the small screen to the cinema. A hateful hypocrite finds himself haunted by the horrors of history. A senior sanctuary is stirred by a sprightly stranger and his shiny tin can. A little lad's lavish life is laden with lurking dangers as his family fulfills his frightening fancies. And an insurance investigator becomes the sole spectator to a terrifying terror at 20,000 feet. With devilish direction from Giallo Landis, Steven Spielberg, Gord Dante, and George Thriller, these masters of macabre promise to show you something really scary in 1983's Twilight Zone, the movie. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Oh, God. Remember the Twilight Zone with Burgess Meredith? Remember? He loved to read, and there was a nuclear war, and he had no friends anyway, and he was down in the basement of the library. Yes!
Oh, those shows. They were so good. They were so scary.
Yeah.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah. I trust you.
Okay, pull the car over.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Konnichiwa, Brian-o-san.
Ooh. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I had the dubbing turned on.
Gods, yeah, could we change that? Yeah. I didn't have my subtitles up. We are coming back to the Anthology series that we've started our very first year on the show. We are now in the 501s of Horror Anthology 501. This is graduate school now. We're heading to med school of...
Pair of 90s jeans or maybe some sort of tax status.
Yeah, we're in the 501 tax status for the Grindhouse.
Yeah.
That's it. We're talking 3 films today. We're talking Kwaidan from 1964. That's how I've been pronouncing it. Believe that's how the pronunciation is, but I want to make sure.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying Kwaidan, but what do I know?
So we're 2 white guys. I don't know if you guys knew this yet, but we're just going to say Kwaidan or Kwaidan. That will be back and forth.
My third grade Japanese is not coming in handy here.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think I ever even took any third grade Japanese. You're pretty privileged to have that.
Yeah.
Kwaidan from 1964, Vault of Horror from 1973, and Twilight Zone the movie from 1983. I've been waiting to get Twilight Zone on this show since our very first one. I think that was one of our very first suggestions, but it's taken us a while to get this one on. Vault of Horror being a sequel, more or less, to one of them that we had on our... Was that our first Tales from the Crypt, or maybe our second?
Second, I think.
So,
on the first one we did...
Yeah.
What was it? Dead of Night.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got kind of the OG horror anthology in there, the one that set the tone. But this is a really interesting block. Just to forewarn everyone, Kwaidan is on Criterion, and it is long. But I can tell you that this is a grouping of small featurettes that are so incredibly captivating and interesting that it kind of makes that time go by pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, each story is, 40-ish minutes. So, if you're used to watching, if you're used to watching or binge watching prestige TV, you could do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Exactly. It's like binging a 4-episode or so of an 8-episode season. Exactly. Yeah. So let's get into it. I really wanted to... I know we got a lot of movies to actually talk about here with all of our individual segments here, but let's start with Kwaidan, and it's a collection of Japanese folk tales that was produced by the Toho Group, who you might know from such films as Godzilla, and every other Japanese film that was done in high production on stages. And talk about high production and stages. This was a marvel when it came to some studio work that they did. The set design and art was just remarkable.
Yeah, no, it really was. I mean, I guess for a modern audience or whatever, you're going to have to also maybe be forewarned that the sets just look fake as hell, but the point of them is not to look realistic. You think of it, German Expressionism, and this is the Japanese version of that. Japanese Expressionism. It's kind of apparently based in the No theater tradition, and it's kind of like translating that to film, but it very much feels like the way German Expressionism was used, which is like extreme dramatic lighting shifts, like theatrical lighting, incredible painted backgrounds. Like it's not in the first one. I think it's in the second one with the Woman in the Snow. But like, there's those eyes in the sky, and like it looks like, it kind of looks like space, but it kind of looks like aliens. It's pretty wild, and the sort of like way that the sets and whatever will give sort of insight into what the what the characters are going through internally. That's all sort of being expressed externally through the sets and the sort of theatrical lighting. Yeah,
kind of the joy of using sets and that control that you have in a stage, and they really took advantage of that control here. As it's not just a person's emotion changing; it's your entire visual landscape changing, even behind them. The mise-en-scène changes, people change. We could get into each of the stories here. I mean, you started with the Woman in the Snow. I know this black hair is technically our first.
Yeah, no, let's just go through it.
I did want to say one thing about the sets, though, and I think that I don't think that there's another way that they could have done this. They could have gone realistic with it and found forest sets and water sets and things, but since this is pulled what is obviously from old Japanese artwork, it felt like that artwork completely come to life. They turn it into 3-dimensional world, and it's just I don't know if it could have been done. I think they would do it with either CG or those new projected backgrounds that they have.
Right.
So, and it would be the same process in 2024 as it was in 64, to be honest. But in order to get the same effect.
Yeah, no, that's a good call, especially when you think of the opening to Hitoshi the Earless.
Yeah,
and they're showing you those 2D paintings that do not have any depth of field in the paintings themselves, and then they kind of bring it to life with very similar looking camera angles and
with the top down to make it flat, and
exactly. So you really, they are telling you sort of where the inspiration and stuff came from as it comes together.
Yeah, they did a really great job of aligning the source material with what you were seeing, almost like B-roll style. But that one probably a little more than the others. But Larry, let's jump into the first one, because this is kind of a classic thing that you see in a lot of old Japanese horror, is the black hair attacking, or a black hair creature that attacks from a person's, they're looking one direction and their hair is attacking someone from another. That's like a common thing you see. And that's what this is all about. But, I mean, talk about a Tales from the Crypt sort of reference here, or something that people would have referenced in future Tales from the Crypts. Like this one, it inspired a ton.
Yeah, it's definitely a familiar model. And so I had never seen Kwaidan, but the idea of it was, supposed to be these, essentially Japanese ghost stories or Japanese horror stories, folk tales. And this one that starts off the movie, the black hair, it's a period drama with a samurai who leaves his first wife, goes off to marry some noblewoman and live the good life, and then feels bad about it and wants to come back to her. And what's funny is you get about like 30 minutes into it, you're like, oh shit, is this less horror than what we were like what was promised on the back of the box here? And like
where the hell's the horror?
Yeah, where the hell is it? And no, it actually it's there, and it cranks it up at the very end. But like you gotta kind of wait for it. But it was one of those things where I was like, ooh boy, are we just doing an anthology film here, or what is this?
This might be Anthology 101 as we get into outside of horror. Yeah, we have been talking about doing that, but we didn't want to start on this episode.
Yeah,
especially with the 3.5 hours we had sit through this. Not that that's a bad thing. I keep saying that as if it's a negative. It's actually a really beautiful film. It's just very long with people with kids.
Let's pause on that one for right now, because that is a usual complaint from the Brian Foster side of things. How did you deal with the more than 3 hour running time?
It's funny, you said that you took this in like several segments, like probably a segment over a course of several days. I'd say 4 or 5 days. I was texting you and you're like, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I sat through this in 2 sittings. I watched 2 segments, and then I watched the other 2 segments. So I really burned through a lot of it in one. I couldn't put it down, really.
Yeah.
So you brought the black hair again. Yes, it starts out slow, but once things happen where they're cops, right? Samurai, they're like police. They're the justice, judge, jury, and executioner in a way of whoever
they're like the enforcer for some lord or whatever.
They're an executioner, and then they work for a lord, right? So they want to find someone to work for that actually gives them some status as well. And this guy was trying to go for that status, and he wasn't getting it living with this wife that he had. So he instead tries to find this totally terrible person that has some cash. He lives the good life for a little bit, comes back to his wife. Now he's like, oh, I feel bad. We were in love and I just left for money. Oh no, everything's fine. We're good. We're together again. Finds out that this wife is already dead. The second we get the Tales from the Crypt reveal is like the next day he wakes up and he's laying next to her corpse as her hair is attacking him. And it's just like vicious. They made the hair look really cool, very creepy when it would jump into scene, and it would animate really nicely, and it literally like sucked the life away from him.
Right. He just looked like a little bleached testicle at the end there. He was just like
shriveled, exactly, like a shriveled nut. Yeah, not much left. But yeah, this was this one felt to me most like Tales from the Cryptish. There's another one in here that we'll talk about. The In a Cup of Tea felt very Tales from the Cryptish.
Yeah.
But this Black Hair had that same ending, that same just desserts what you get for, screwing up earlier in life.
Right.
It's great.
Well, it's funny, too, because it's like, it's not as usually, like, so with Tales from the Crypt stories, it's usually a very clean, like, crisp injustice.
Right.
And then, you get that.
It's usually your opener.
Yeah, swift kick in the nuts at the end, and while he gets the kick in the nuts at the end, it's a really like sort of messy way that it comes about. So he leaves his first wife, goes and marries his second wife, and when he's with his second wife, he talks about how sort of horrible she is or whatever. But then what we see is that she comes to him and is like, "Hey, how's it going, babe?" And
you want to be together?
And he's like, "Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah.
I don't even love you anymore." And then, so it feels like it's just more of this guy just being completely shitty to everybody.
But it wasn't a crisp injustice. He was just an overall dickhead.
And she was supposed to be this like loveless person, but then she was also not shown to be that. And she was completely hurt by it and whatever.
Yeah.
So, essentially this guy, hurt two women in his quest for status and whatever else. And what was great was like there was that they were doing some like jousting or some game or they were doing something. At one point he goes to take a drink of water, and as he's drinking his water and whatever, he's having these flashbacks to his previous wife, and it's there's no diegetic sound happening, so it's just like we hear these noises or we hear instruments or whatever, and he's like flashing back to her, and he comes back into the house and he's imagining himself being reunited with her, which is then contrasted later on when he actually does go back to her, and the whole house, the exterior, it's all overgrown and it's all in disrepair, and he finds his first wife on the loom, which is what she was doing.
He didn't find that odd at all, walking into that disheveled.
And he was like, "Oh,
hey,
wow,
I guess everything's okay."
It's all normal. Hey, please forgive me. She's like, "Yeah, no problem, dude. It's all good."
Happy ending, baby.
Yeah. It's like, wow, well, that was easy. And then
we still got another 5 minutes of this one.
Yeah. The next morning, he wakes up, and what was so cool was like every time we would cut back to her, she was in a different state of decomposition, or and it wasn't like a linear thing either. It was just like every time he would see her, it would be in a different light, essentially.
Yeah.
And then every time we would cut back to him, he would be drained, and then as he fights with the hair on his way out of the house until we get to the end where he's just that that Skeletor looking,
and it went gray, right? Like, didn't he get completely like white?
Yeah, and his hair was falling out, and like
just
and
terrifying.
Just horrifying. And then it ends with him like fighting the hair, and it like freeze frames as he's like getting his ass kicked by the hair.
Yeah, you've mentioned your distaste for freeze frames. I thought they were pretty effective here to kind of close some of these out.
Yeah, no, there is this type of freeze frame that ends a movie. I think Stay Tuned end that way, and it's like the like an 80s sitcom style of like, well, we don't know how to end it, so freeze frame, we're done.
Exactly.
And like and that type of thing, I usually mock, but this one it was especially with the sound design and the score or whatever, like the freeze frame on this was actually pretty horrifying, because you kind of wanted to see where it was going to go, but it stopped right before.
Yeah.
Presumably it was going to kill him or
drain him more, or now take
completely
on
drain him. Yeah.
So it was like I was wondering what exactly happened, but it seemed like just because this guy left his home, that it was no longer protected, and so whatever creature or demon this hair creature was, they actually have a name, and I forgot what that is, but came and actually destroyed the house because he wasn't there to protect his wife, and that's why she go. I didn't know what that backstory was, and I thought that because when he came back, you saw all this stuff in disrepair, like you said, it added even more. It's like, what the hell happened here? And the fact that it didn't even cross his mind, it was like almost like he was enchanted by this thing too quickly, and it had its grasps on him.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is like, because we saw him yearning for this so much and imagining what his
Perfect Life or
Perfect Life, and like
Yeah.
him being reunited would be, you get sort of lulled into this false sense of like, is this gonna turn out well for him? But it also is one of those things where because we see him sort of so vividly imagining his moment where he's reunited with her in that earlier flashback, it sort of calls into question like how much of this is objectively happening and how much is the guilt for him just like driving him nuts, and that's what kind of what we're seeing is that this is something that's sort of, it is an external representation of his like sort of internal turmoil with him, going back and reuniting. So maybe physically his body didn't go back there, but mentally that's where he's at. Type of
I feel like that could be attributed to a couple of these. Very much just a representation of the guilt. There's no real monsters out there, but the guilt creates and manifests.
Especially in the last one.
The name of the yokai, the hair monster, yokai is demon in Japanese, is the Futakuchi Onna, and that's the hair creature that actually comes out. And so I'm a big nerd for this kind of stuff. So this movie really had a lot of that really interesting stuff in it. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It really felt like an anime.
So we can sneak 3-hour movies into this.
Absolutely, no. This one was awesome. Yeah.
Only if it's Japanese Meiji era.
Yeah. Nothing before the Edo period or. Yeah. I don't even know. I'm just making that up. So on our previous episode of Anthology, was it the last one we did, I believe? Or at least one of our previous ones?
This is
2 ago now. They're going quickly.
Yeah, this is like 3 ago. This is
awesome.
This is the second episode. Yeah.
So there was an episode on that one called Lover's Vow. It was a really cool story about a guy who was kind of down on his luck, gets attacked by some gargoyle or some sort of creature.
Right.
His buddy dies, and he's told by the gargoyle, hey, if you ever tell anybody about this situation, nothing good will come of this, but I am going to spare your life. And he's like, okay, fine. And lo and behold, he ends up meeting a nice woman, and his life kind of turns around, and everything is going really good for this guy. And finally, he ends up telling this girl because he trusts her about this strange night, and all hell breaks loose. That's what this story...
Why did you tell me that?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what The Woman in the Snow is. Very similar story, very similar... I mean, same beats, beat for beat. A man and 2 woodcutters are out in the forest. They're cutting down wood during a snowstorm. One of them is killed by a demon woman. I'm not sure what that is, but kind of more of a vampire, I'd say, in this one. They actually suck the blood from you.
It's kind of a life force style vampire where, your whole body is like, everything is sucked out of it, and you're just turned into this like mummified husk.
I love that the Japanese are like, no, they don't just pierce your neck and drain your blood; they suck every bit of your life force from you. But this one's called the Yuki Onna. The Yuki Onna is just a woman that can walk around. It's a figure. It's not actually a woman. So like, let's not, it's shapeless, if you will.
Right.
But this creature sucks the life out of this guy's buddy, his partner. Tells him that, hey, I'm not going to do anything. You're a young-looking guy. You look handsome and all that. I'm not going to kill you, so I'm going to let you live. But don't tell anybody about this because that will be bad. And very similar to Preston's story in the Tales from the Dark Side episode, this is the same kind of thing. He has a great life with this woman he meets. And they have a family together. But in this one, it ends a little bit differently. She actually gives him a chance. Yeah,
it does, and it like has a slightly different setup, which is that the 2 woodcutters get into that little hut or whatever, and then the snowstorm's going crazy. I thought what was happening at first is that the woman was a representation of like, I don't know, frostbite or something, because like one of the doors was kind of flapping open and the guy closer to that door dies.
Right.
And then she's like, oh, I'll let you live if you keep this our little secret. And so Tatsuya Nakadai, was the woodcutter who lived, and he was famous Japanese actor, still alive, by the way. He's in his 90s now.
Wow.
He was in, I don't know, Yojimbo and Sword of Doom. He was in Ran and Kagemusha, the Kurosawa movies. Anyway, he plays the younger woodcutter, and he's the one who like lives, makes this promise thing. But the thing is, like, that night while they were in the little shack there, one of them dies, one of them lives, but him living, like, he like is like passed out, or I don't know what. He's in bad shape.
Near death.
The boatman or whatever who was going to take him across the river finally comes back after the storm, grabs him, and takes him back home. And so the thing is, like, for him, it was like he had a little bit more of an excuse to bring this up than James Remar did in Tales from the Crypt, which is that, the whole thing felt like, was this a dream? Was he hallucinating because he was like sort of, dying type of thing?
Oh, he wasn't sure if it was real, you mean?
Yeah, and he even says that in his confession to her.
You look just like her. Yeah.
Which is, we're skipping ahead, but like,
yeah.
But the thing is, like, the woodcutter comes back, meets with his mom. Mom kind of nurses him back to health. Then he's out woodcutting one day, finds this beautiful woman walking through the woods, takes her back home because, it was already dark, and, she was going to go meet some relatives or something. But cut to whatever that is, like 6-7 years later.
Yeah, after the mother had brought her in immediately. Like,
yeah. His mom is dead. He's been married to this woman. They've got 3 kids together, and they were like, passing those washing women, and they're like, damn, she never seems to age. Yeah. She's always, smoking hot, and yeah, weird. And then he sees her in a certain light after he gets done making those little sandals for the family,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
girl in the bad light. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, bad light on the porch.
Yeah,
and like he's like, oh wow, that reminds me. You know what was crazy? When I was out in this wood one time, and I was losing my mind, and it felt like a fever dream. It didn't even feel real. This thing happened to me, and it was a demon was there, and it was crazy. It was like, just in this weird light, you kind of looked like the demon, and then the theatrical lighting just like shifts on a dime. You're like, ah! And then like it's like, well, there's a reason I look like the demon, you asshole. It was me. It was me the whole time.
I just put glasses on and you wouldn't recognize me. I did the Superman thing.
It's the Clark Kent Superman dichotomy. But it's funny because unlike Tales from the Dark Side, the demon pops up and, like, I don't know, rips his head off or essentially kills him.
Right.
And then the demon and the children both turn into gargoyles.
And they leave together.
All turn into gargoyles, and then they all fly on top of a building and turn to stone.
Yeah.
But in this one, she's like, you idiot. You were not supposed to talk about this, even to just me. The 2 people who know this story, by the way.
So that's why this story kind of confuses me too. But
well, I mean, it's the same in Tales from the Dark Side too. It's like,
I don't think the motivation makes full sense to me. It's almost like, is it just keeping a secret? Is that the parable? You need to be able to trust and keep, but also, where's the trust in your loved one to be able to tell those secrets to, that there's another vault that you can put it in,
right?
If I can't tell my wife this stuff, like, who the hell can I talk to? It puts me in a this parable or this lore puts me in a bad place. It put me in a bad place with Tales from the Dark Side. I'm like, this guy was just trusting Ray Don Chong, who is very trustworthy in this. She's awesome. She's fun. She's beautiful. She's really cool to hang out with. I would tell her everything. Like, it's like, if you're going to test somebody, that's how you test them. Like, no, you can tell me anything, baby. Tell me. But no, I can't.
Yeah, exactly. This is the test. And, did she fail the test or did he?
Right. Yeah, who's losing? Who fucks up here? Is it the demon's actually the one that messes up? I'm being too nice again.
Exactly.
You're being too trustworthy.
You're bringing up this idea that, like, this story, does it represent something about human nature, or I guess with the director of Kwaidan, which we didn't mention earlier, Masaki
Kobayashi.
A lot of his films are all about sort of social realism, and he's fighting against the jingoism and the war effort and all these things that were going on at that time. He was very much anti-war in the Imperial Japanese system, which was, pretty dangerous. And, he has all these other ideas about how, it's like, earlier in this story was when it had the big C and I in the background, and, is that about authoritarianism and the ever-presence of fascism, and everybody's watching, and you got to be careful what you say and do. And so, is this story about that? Maybe. But I think what it's really about is how guys need to not bring up old shit.
Yeah, that's as simple as it is, and I think that we don't need to overcome. Oh, could it be?
We already talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, don't bring up old shit, right? Pick your battles. Like, there's no reason to fucking drum up old shit. That's such a great way to put it, man. Yeah, maybe that's the problem that I've been having too. I've been overthinking this whole story even since Tales from the Dark Side. I'm like, no, dude. You got a beautiful wife, kids, you're happy. Shut your fucking mouth.
We already talked about this, exactly. We put this one to bed already. Well, the last little thing about Woman of the Snow was just that how different it was from the Tales from the Dark Side version. And it's interesting because, she still kind of turns into her true form and or whatever, like closer to the true form, and, yells at him for being an asshole. And but in this one, instead of literally biting his head off, she is like, hey, if it wasn't for those kids in there, I would have killed you, you bastard.
Yeah, she has a heart.
And then she's like, all right, well, take care of the kids.
Bye.
Smell you later. And, wanders out in the snow. And it's pretty wild because, Tatsuya Nakadai is completely heartbroken. He runs out and...
he made her some sandals.
He takes the sandals that he made for her and throws them out there. And when we see this kind of heart-wrenching moment where he's like looking out in the snow for her and she's gone. And then it ends on the sandals. And it's like, okay, snow's piling up, time's passing by, we're just holding on this, 3/4 overhead shot. And then all of a sudden, the sandals are gone, and there's an imprint where they used to be. And, it's like, what? She was like, oh yeah, I need these sandals for the road. And she came back and snatched them.
Yeah, my feet are cold. I mean, she's living in the snow. She might as well get a little bit of comfort and something out of this.
Yeah, well, does this, is this more like she's just taking a little break there, and then she's going to come back, that type of thing.
So I'm wondering, who's the one being tortured now? Is it the Yuki Ono, and that she finds a life, she has kids, all of a sudden she thinks that things are going to turn around for her, but then this guy breaks his promise, and now she's back out trying to find the next woodcutter, and is this now she's cursed to do this constantly over and over? And you almost turned the tables on it a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Which kind of, makes it maybe less immediately horrifying than the way they did it in Tales from the Dark Side, but a little bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah,
because it gives you something to chew on as you think about it.
I think that one, she literally took the Jason Voorhees punch to the head, knock your block off kind of approach at the end, and literally just knocked his head off, right?
In Tales, you mean? In Tales from the Dark Side, yeah.
Yeah, in Tales from the Dark Side, yeah.
You promised you'd never tell!
All right, so after this episode, this movie does politely offer an intermission. Which
if you're going to stop for the night, maybe this is the place to do it, and then pick it up in the morning.
And then we're going to be going into Oichi the Earless. This one... a lot of setup in this one. This is the one where we get into, the whole background of the warring factions that were even predating what our story's about, so.
Right, it was hundreds of years before that.
Mm-hmm. And we get that whole setup with this person, Hoichi, who's a young musician. He is blind. He plays an instrument called the biwa. I'm sure you've heard it. You've seen that one with a very cool pick that they use. It almost looks like a scraper. But his specialty is singing the special tale, the tale of Heiki, which is about a specific battle. And this kind of drums up the spirits in the world. And they're like, hey, you're keeping us kind of energized and alive. Keep singing to us. And finally, maybe we'll actually come back and become fully formed and, take over again. Very, very interesting, this one. I thought this was my favorite of the 5. Are there 5 or 4? 4 of them.
Well, kind of 5,
right.
But basically 4.
There is kind of 5, yeah, I see. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Hoichi the Earless.
Yeah.
And why it's called the Earless.
Poor Hoichi would not be able to listen to this podcast because he's earless.
Oh, yeah, that's such a...
Yeah. No, actually he could listen to it, but I don't know. Because he could hear after the whole incident.
I don't think that removes your hearing. These flaps on the side of our heads just protect our ears. Yeah. The ears are in here.
Yeah. Yeah. The hearing apparatus is on the inside.
So if you have no idea what we're talking about, there is a bit of a Reservoir Dogs moment in this episode. Is
pretty intense.
Pretty intense.
A double Reservoir Dogs.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. So this one starts off pretty slow.
Uh-huh.
As a first-time viewer, you're sitting there like, well, what are we doing here? Because it's just playing this battle, and it's cutting to the sort of wood carvings. And then
the dissolves.
Then to these reenactments of it, wood carvings, reenactments, and it's very stylized. It's very.
This one feels like the art come to life.
Exactly, like where the camera is very locked down in certain places, which is a huge contrast to the next one in particular, where the cameras are constantly moving and doing crazy stuff. And it really feels like the ship battle's going on for quite a while there. I mean, it's sort of one of those things where, if you have the patience for it, it is a good one. But it's funny because this movie, as long as it is now, originally I think when it was released stateside anyway, it was cut down to like an hour and a half. And
what?
Yeah, they I think they cut out the whole snow demon story.
Oh no!
And then chopped off the top of this one, which is getting rid of all the sea battle stuff, and got straight into him playing the biwa or whatever. But anyway, so they did a bunch of retooling of it, which I mean they'd have to cut half of it out essentially to make it fit. But
that's silly.
Yeah. But anyway, so he retells this story in his sort of in song and in this essentially this rock anthem that he's playing there on the biwa. And then I don't know what he's doing. Is he like an intern at the Buddhist temple there? Because it seemed like Takashi Shimura, he's the sort of head monk at the temple, and then there's a couple other guys underneath that, and then there are these other people who are like janitors essentially, and I wasn't sure what Hoichi's job title was there, but anyway,
everyone takes out the garbage in the monastery. Jeremy.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It was great seeing Takashi Shimura in this.
Yeah,
he was in something like
all of Kurosawa's
90% of Kurosawa's movies. He's the sort of lead guy in or the lead samurai in Seven Samurai, and
wasn't he the main cop in
Stray Dogs?
Stray Dogs, yeah.
Yeah. And, I think he's the woodcutter in Rashomon, right? He's also the sort of scientist or one of the main characters in the original Godzilla. Anyway.
Dude, utility player, man.
Yeah. He's in everything. And he's great. Exactly. And in this one, he's playing this this monk who's, the most senior guy at this monastery.
And he has to care for these guys. Like, he has to keep account of where they all are. But then your blind musician starts going out at night, and you're like, where the hell are you going, man?
Yeah. Hey, why are you so tired? Oh, because I was out all night playing. I was just
playing the biwa all night.
Yeah. Well, so what's kind of cool is like, in the evening, before everyone was settling down, Hoichi's taking a break from taking out the trash or whatever he's doing all day long, and sits down to jam on the biwa, and like somebody comes by and is like, hey, you got to come play for this person who's really, really important. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll just go now. And then goes off and plays a concert for these
ghosts.
People, these ghosts that have been gone for hundreds of years. It kind of felt like, oh God, what was the name of the ship? The Dane in the Fog or whatever, where it's like, like those guys just wanted a private concert real quick.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the sea lay the Elizabeth Dane.
But he goes off and does this concert, and then they're like, okay, that was rad. There are like 26 other, movements to this piece. Why don't you come back every night and keep playing it? Then after a couple nights of that, I think, Takashi Shimura finds out what's going on, and he's like, oh, this is no good.
You must stop doing this immediately. Yeah. You are almost too far gone. Yeah, because, I mean, that's the part of it, right? These spirits were trying to come back and using him as this conduit.
Right. Yeah, like he it's like, yeah.
He was bringing up the memory of them and creating more life.
He was
for
like,
them.
Exactly. He was the gatekeeper for Gozer there. And like,
yeah.
And so he's like, okay, well, we need to prepare you for the next night when these demons are going to come to grab you. And like,
so we're going to cover you with spells.
And it was the most, I think, out of a movie full of striking imagery, some of the most striking imagery came from this, where they do this, they paint this calligraphy all over his body, head to toe. And, it is usually used as the poster art for the thing, where it's like, the guy's eyes are closed. He's, covered with a lot of black lettering. He has red lettering on his forehead.
Except for one place, though. They didn't cover one place.
Whoopsies. Yeah. Was it like what, behind his knees or something? Or his ears? Sorry. Yeah. Whoops. Forgot the ears.
Oichi the kneeless.
Yeah. And like, he then has to pretend like he's meditating all night, and like the sort of samurai enforcer is like, okay, it's time for your concert now. Come on, let's go, buddy. Can you hear me? Come on, let's go. Let's get a move on.
But the ghost couldn't see him because all he could see, or he couldn't see through the spell. He couldn't dispel whatever spell they were writing all over him, except for the one piece that they didn't cover, which were literally two disembodied ears floating around the room, pretty much to the samurai.
Right. So the ghost samurai comes over and, grabs him by the ears and is like shaking him. And the whole thing is he can't make a sound because otherwise that'll let them know where he's at. And then the ghost samurai, just fucking tears his ears off like pulled pork.
Because he's like, I can't go back empty-handed. I need to bring something back of this musician. That's what he said. That was his whole justification was, well, if I can't bring the musician, I'm just going to bring his ears.
Yeah. Does this work? Yeah.
Here, let me see if I can blow into these and maybe the same music will happen. Yeah.
Then we have this really, really horrifying scene where he's not screaming. He's holding it in, and holding his bloody stumps and just in a bad spot. Then the next morning, the sort of janitor guys wake up and are like, oh shit, what's all this blood? And like they see that from outside of the house leading into the deeper in part of the house or the temple or wherever they were, this like trail of blood, and Takashi Shimura's helping him recover, and was like, oh man, we fucked up. This one's on us. Sorry, dog.
Oh man. We didn't think that they would look at the ears. Well, this is one way to find out if you're correct or not. Yeah,
they sure did.
However, though, Hoichi does go on to become a wealthy man, because people hear of his magical biwa music, and lords across the country or countryside ask him to come and play, which ends up going pretty well for him moving forward from this. He actually becomes a bit of a musician that travels around, kind of a minstrel that plays for different kingdoms.
Yeah, no, totally. They said something about he became the richest man in the land or something because he could shred on the damn biwa.
I love it. This one had a good, nice, fun ending. Yeah, nice upbeat one.
Yeah, it's pretty upbeat. He just gets mutilated, but
that's about as upbeat as you're gonna get from these this series. Yeah, like none of these really end nicely, I guess.
Yeah, no, this is probably the happiest ending. You're right.
Yeah, like you might be earless, but you got some cash in your pocket.
Yeah, good. Each one starts off with a sort of title card. Hoichi the Earless, and then, the Woman of the Snow, or whatever it is, and then...
Yeah, it's segmented crisply, yeah.
Yeah, the Hoichi the Earless, it was like, okay, here's Hoichi, he's blind. I see his ears, that's interesting. That's a weird title.
Yeah,
where's this going?
This better come back around.
Yeah. But this one starts off with the year 1900, or whatever, as the title.
Which is when this group of stories was technically written, The Stories and Studies of Strange Things.
Wait, that is what the the guy is writing?
In 1904, there was a collection of all of these stories, and that was Kwaidan, which was Ghost Story. Stories and Studies of Strange Things in 1904. So this was kind of this felt like the Stephen King segment, the writer in the meta world getting attacked by his own writing kind of situation.
Right. It's like, it starts off 1900, and it's like, okay.
Modern time, yeah.
Is that the name of this one? Year 1900? Right. And then, because we're kind of looking in this little, village or whatever, and there are, I don't know, these two Japanese women playing Japanese pickleball or whatever out front. And then we get in, we get into the scene where it's like, okay, this is kind of acting almost as the spine, because the guy who's sitting there collecting all these old scrolls and, looking through stuff and kind of trying to, retype essentially these old stories. We hear him talking to himself or narrating to himself that, a lot of these stories, kind of go to a certain place and then they stop. And it's like, I think the audience is learning that like some of the other stories that we've read were completed, but he's got all these like story fragments. And then it's like he's like, he's theorizing, a lot of the literature went unfinished. Maybe they were lost. Maybe there was a quarrel with the publisher. Perhaps they died while writing it.
Right.
It's like the Monty Python thing where it's like he wouldn't write arg, he'd just say it and die.
He who is valiant may find the Holy Grail in the castle of... What?
It turns into one of these things where it's like, well, big gulps, huh? And he like that guy's gone. And then we get to the story In a Cup of Tea, and that's the title card that comes up. And, this is where we start really getting into these really intense angles, and, some of the crazy camera work was in this story where, the sort of main samurai guy, he goes off to get a drink of water. It seems like he was already in a strange spot because he was breaking rank to do that. They had all the samurai lined up in formation out front. As soon as like the Lord's gone, he's like, okay, I'm gonna hop up and grab a drink of water over here. And everyone else is like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And as he goes to pour the water, he sees a face in the reflection of the water, and he like looks at the bowl and tosses it out. Yeah. Okay, well, that was weird. Where is this? And that section actually goes on for quite a long time. But like each time he pours the water and sees the face, we start getting these like crazy Dutch angles from underneath. We get these spots where we see the action more than once, but from these different angles, which throws you off as you're watching it. It's kind of like very jarring. And then we get this thing where it's like we'll start tight and then kind of move over to the other side of him real fast and get his reaction to it. And at one point he like throws one of the cups and just breaks it, and he's like, okay, well, now I'll just pour it in this other cup and the guy will be gone. No, the guy's still there. And it's like kind of whipping around and doing all these different things and giving you this like sort of fever dream moment. Like the whole thing just feels like a bad trip. And you don't know what's going on or why he's, being cursed by this thing. But it is definitely following him wherever he goes. And I can't remember how that one ends. Does he end up just like, drinking right out of the spoon or whatever? The ladle?
The samurai sees the face of the dude in the cup, or the person in the tea in the cup of tea. Later, there's the man appears again. Then the samurai's like, guys, there's something odd happening. Oh, shut up! There's nothing happening. Go back to your post, whatever. Yeah. Then he's visited by 3 spirits, kind of in the.
Well, actually, like earlier before that, like while he's still in the castle doing his like night duty, he's like in the deep inner chambers, and the guy he saw in his little water cup just shows up out of nowhere, and he's like, what? How the hell did you get in here? You got past 90 guards to get to me? Where he was on patrol, it sounded like he was like, the sort of final boss. And this guy's like, oh, you wronged me, asshole. You don't remember me from weeks ago or whatever? And he's like, why would I remember you? And then Ghost kind of like, he goes to slash at him. The guy disappears. he turns around, sees he's right behind him, and then he goes to slash him again, and he gets him as a ghost, and then he disappears again. That main samurai rings the alarm bell around everyone else, and we get this really cool sequence where he, like, you see him in his big ceremonial outfit, and the sort of giant shoulder pads things, he, like, whips them back, and they turn into these wings, and he's, like, as he's running, he's, like, untying some shit and, like, and getting ready to convert his suit into battle mode, and it was pretty cool. And anyway,
Transformers, yeah.
Raise the alarm. Everyone's like, what are you talking about? There's no one here. And then I think the next night he's at home, like, depressed or whatever, like he was on sick leave, and ding dong, there's a couple visitors here, and it's it's like the three demons from Big Trouble in Little China. It's like they've all got the Raiden hats on.
The Storms.
Listen, you wounded our dude. He's gonna be recovering, but in 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it was, expect a visit. And he's like, what, fuck you? And he starts attacking these demons, right. And in a very long sequence, he
beats them.
Eventually beats them, and then he turns around and he's like, oh, they're back.
But that's it.
And then that's it. Yeah, it's like,
but there's a reason that it ends so abruptly, right? Because we go back now.
Yeah.
We're into the spine of this episode.
We're back to the year 1900 episode.
And this writer who's been trying to put together all of these pieces of lore to try to make a complete story for his publisher. His publisher actually does show up, who he's been afraid of coming to visit him because he's like, I've got nothing completed yet, so let me get something down here.
He's a writer. He's as soon as there's a deadline, oh no.
Yeah, he's very much a writer. That's why I felt like this was like how Stephen King kind of takes that apart, like the writers in his stories. But this is the publisher soon shows up, asks to see this guy. They can't find him. And then they find that this guy himself, in a meta way, has been transported into a large vat of water. It's not really a cup of tea.
At no point is there a cup of tea, really. It's like, the guy is in a cup of...
human-sized cup of tea.
Water at the beginning, and then...
The only thing you can see is in a teacup is when the one samurai drinks, but that's the only tea that I get out of it.
Yeah, I guess it was but it's not a cup of tea. It's just a cup of water. But anyway...
In a teacup is what you should call it.
Yeah, exactly. In a teacup is what it should be, yeah. But... in the end, they have a big, I don't know, giant, like almost witch's pot or whatever. It's like
cauldron,
a cauldron, and where they're heating their water or whatever. And the wife of the writer goes to get the publisher, some hot water, and like, oh no, and like then they like run out, and then I think the camera kind of slowly moves over and booms up to show us what's in there.
Wasn't that a great final shot? Because totally. You get reaction, and then that slow reveal on what they saw.
Wait, what is it? What is it?
Yeah, and it's creepy. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's almost as if like the story just needed to end with him having like the same fate as whatever was in the story he was writing.
No, it's like The Ring. It's like once you see this story, it'll happen to you.
So that was the story.
And wait a minute, the audience just saw this story. Oh no!
Yeah. There you go. Okay. That's the William Castle thing when one person or three people out of the group are actually in a vat of water by the end.
Yeah. Speaking of William Castle, the Tingler, the whole thing is that you have to be able to scream to let out the fear.
Yeah.
And if we go back to Oichi the Earless, he wasn't able to scream.
Oh man.
So the Tingler got him.
Dude. And that's how we tie in other movies.
That's how we tie in future episodes.
Vault of Horror, 1973 sequel to Tales from the Crypt. This was also known as Vault of Horror, Further Tales from the Crypt, and Tales from the Crypt 2. But I think Vault of Horror is definitely the right name for this because that was the other grouping of books. There was Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and then there was the something of Secrets or something. I forgot. It was another one, the Cave of something. Where the witch was running stuff, but the Vault of Horror was run by the Vault Keeper. Very much a sequel to the one that we saw, the Tales from the Crypt. This felt like kind of a quick cash-in, if you will, sequel, because they did it in a very simple way, but still it was almost like simplified to the fact that this really felt like what the show ultimately in the 90s was based off of, very succinct, tight, segmented stories that were kind of crisp on their own. But yeah, we can go through this one. Let's start it up.
It is funny because, like, like the 70s Tales from the Crypt, which I guess that also harkens back to our Anthology 201. So Tales from the Dark Side and Tales from the Crypt were on that one.
Wow, that was a banger episode.
Yeah. This one, like you said, was sort of unofficial sequel to Tales from the Crypt. It is also, at least on DVD and Blu-ray, it usually comes as like a 2-pack of like both the 72 Tales from the Crypt and then Vault of Horror as one package. But it is funny because this one does come later, but it feels like the rough draft of what you would do for Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's essentially the same gag, but just not done as thoroughly as it was in Tales from the Crypt.
This felt very Horror Express, or trying to be more Horror Express than it was.
Dr. Terror's
Dr.
Tales,
Terror.
yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Train titles. That movie could have been called Horror Express, but yeah. Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. This felt more like that than it did the Tales from the Crypt.
It totally did, because I think I'm pretty sure you described that one, Dr. Tales House of Horrors, as like baby's first horror movie, where it's like it's something you'd show to kids as like
it's an entry level. Yeah.
Like the horror's only turned up to like 3 or whatever, and like that's what this one felt like too, because like the in the 70s Tales from the Crypt, everyone was extremely horrible really early on, and then they got it really bad, a lot of times, and in this one it's like people have a lot of schemes or whatever, but their schemes aren't quite as horrifying,
right?
And then what happens to them isn't quite as horrifying either. But what's interesting is like Dr. Terror, like Tales from the Crypt, we start off in this office building. We're in an elevator as the credits are going. The music's banging pretty hard there, and then like each floor we kind of get a new guy in the elevator, and then oh no, we didn't get off of the ground floor. Well, that's weird. And we went to the sub-basement. Well, I guess we'll just get out and
let's go have a talk.
Go hang out.
Look at this nice room with chairs.
I guess everyone going home, no one's got anywhere to be.
Yeah, we didn't have an agenda. We were just in the elevator.
This is a very cool room. They're like, oh wow, it's kind of an executive suite down here, and like it was this marble room with a big table in the middle, and drinks and whatever. So they all just kind of wander out of the elevator and pile into this thing. It is funny because it's like as someone says, it's like, oh, what a peculiar situation, almost like a dream, and it does operate on that logic. It doesn't operate on sort of natural logic, which is in Tales from the Crypt. What was great was that like these people were ostensibly on this tour.
Yep.
Of the crypt, and that's sort of like what why they were there, and so like the sort of surface level logic made sense at that point. This one, it's like it immediately starts with dream logic, where like, yeah, I guess I'll just get off this elevator and go into this room that I wasn't going to go to and have some drinks with these strangers.
Which is why, outside of using it as a great background for the title sequence, I don't know why they did the fly-in to the building. It was like, just start in the elevator opening or something, because you should already be there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, or just like have them start there and like, how'd we get
that's
here?
That's what I mean.
And, yeah,
and then maybe show them like on the elevator, like trying to piece it together, and maybe cut back and forth that way. But I think, all of a sudden, because at one point they're just like, how did we get here? I don't remember. Let's talk to each one of you individually and find out what you know.
Exactly, because if we just started with them shooting the shit.
Yeah.
In the round table, and
that would have been. I would have been like, oh, okay.
They started talking about dreams or whatever. Like, okay, this is just a gentleman's club where they're, they sit there.
Just a bunch of white rich dudes smoking cigars and drinking brandy.
They can't do therapy, so they have to do this instead.
Hey, this is exactly their therapy.
But so we have this kind of clunky device to get it going. But then essentially each one goes around and tells a tale, and then we get into it. Essentially, everybody's going through, and the conceit is everyone goes through and tells a dream they had or a recurring nightmare that they have. I think the first one,
it's the vampire one, Midnight Mess.
Yeah.
What do you want?
I've come to see you. After all, you are my sister. Why have you buried yourself in a place like this? Why is everyone so afraid of the dark here?
Because of them.
Them?
There have been 17 cases so far. Bodies found with every drop of blood drained out of them. Now, tell me why you wanted to find me so badly.
The Midnight Mass one was probably my favorite of the stories in this one.
Okay.
Which is like, you know, this guy hires some private detective to find his sister who has run away, or I don't know what she's done.
Yeah.
And she has the inheritance,
but he kills the private investigator once he gets that information. Like, this guy's a real dick. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. He's like, no one followed you, right? And he kills him. And then
you're alone.
and goes and like finds a sister, and you know, she's not home or something, and then he goes off to some restaurant. And the restaurant's like, yeah, sorry, dog, we're closing. You got to get out of here. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's only 4:30 or whatever.
Not before he served some soup, though, right?
Yeah. Well, no. That was the second time he went there. But like the first time he went, there he was like, oh, can I see a menu? He's like, no, we're closing. And then he steps outside that restaurant. The lights turn off. You know, they're like I think the cab driver who dropped him off is like, that's weird. You come to this part of town? Like, no one comes here after dark and da-da-da-da. Then he finally goes and knocks on his sister's door, gives her the spiel about mommy loved you best and gave you all the inheritance, but what if you're no longer alive? And he kills her. And then, you know, he's like, okay, my job here is done. Goes outside and he's like, hey, the lights are back on at the restaurant. Let's go over there.
Time for some post-murder soup.
Yeah. And the guy's like, okay, here's your soup. And he's like, tomato juice or whatever. And like, and the waiter's like, yeah.
It's a little irony.
Yeah.
A little metallic.
Yeah.
Good evening. The table d'hote is rather nice, sir. Juice, soup, roast, sweet, coffee.
Sounds fine.
It's the fine dining of vampire establishments, I guess, because it was like, you know, deconstructed, you know, blood was coagulated
really
into
nice.
cubes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Some blood sausage. Yeah. Different preparations of blood.
And what was really cool was like how they sort of revealed it as he's like, blood, what? And then like he stands up and he turns around and sees himself in the sort of wall length mirror there. And he's the only one in the mirror, and the entire restaurant is like gone behind him or whatever.
That's a really cool effect. Yeah.
Which is done really, really well. And then, you know, he turns around and oh no, his sister's there, and she's still alive, and she's got vampire teeth. And that actress I knew from, you know, she played the sort of the woman in the pub there in Frenzy, if you remember that one. But you know, she had the big creepy smile with the big the fangs,
kind of rat fangs, right? Like the
yes,
two front teeth as opposed to these ones. Yeah,
yeah, the incisors.
Yeah.
So everyone there grabs him and they turn him upside down and like are draining him. Like they put a spigot
with
in his
a
neck.
Tap.
And,
yeah, they tapped his neck.
They tapped him.
I love that ending.
So good.
I thought it was really cool because he's just kind of like hanging there upside down, and they're just slowly pouring their drinks, like just having their conversation. I thought that was very Tales from the Crypt, right? Like the horror comedy, it's like the lunacy of it is just on full display. It's like, what? But, but still horrifying, right? But the guy's got a beer tap in his neck, you know? It's not like it's serious, but it's awesome. Great finish.
No, exactly. Like that's what I mean. It's like, you know, this is like, oh God, what was it? Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is our entry level vampire story.
Yeah, it's, you know, 7 years old or something, you're watching this one, it'd be, you know, scary enough. But then it's funny, they come back to the sort of round table, the spine, and he's like, oh, that was a weird dream. But apparently he doesn't actually have a sister, or that's what he says anyway. Is that because...
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Do you have a sister? No. No.
Is that because she's a vampire and she's not human anymore or something? I don't know. It's a weird thing because it was like, you know, because each one would kind of like come back and they'd be like, yeah, that's weird because this or that inconsistency from what we just saw. And then we'd go on to the next person who's like, yeah, well, I've got a weird story too, and
I'm an obsessive compulsive.
yeah, the English guy from It's a Mad World then tells us how he got married late in life, and he's a neat freak.
That's Terry Thomas, right?
I believe so.
With the gap in his teeth.
Yeah.
Just what a great performance in this. Two great performances in this. This was my favorite of them.
Okay.
I liked the vampire one, but I thought this one was fantastic about Arthur and Eleanor. Arthur is a absolute obsessive neat freak. He wants everything exactly the way he wants it.
It's labeled. I put it on the label for it.
He is nagging this Eleanor, who tries her best to get it straight every single time. She's just such a nice, very wholesome woman.
Yeah.
This nagging that he gives her just keeps going and going and going. And then finally it was to the point where he's like, can't you do anything right? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and she just absolutely explodes.
No, it's like, can't you do anything neatly?
Oh, neatly. Yeah, neatly.
Well, because he was like a bachelor living for a long time, and he had everything in its right place and all these different things, and like
he was in his own place.
And she just couldn't learn his system or whatever, and he insisted on keeping that same system.
His system was super good, though. I don't know if you really got into it. I was taking some notes. It felt like a really good way to organize some of your stuff, and I was getting a little bit obsessed with it myself.
No, it again, like the sort of marriage advice in the yokai one. This one, it's like, there's a little give and take. Yeah, it's like
right.
Okay, great, you got a good system here, and if we can get it to work, then great, and if not, you got to have adapt.
Yeah, exactly, and unfortunately, Arthur couldn't adapt. Eleanor couldn't get it perfectly straight, so Arthur lost his mind. And then Eleanor puts a hammer through the top of his head, which I thought was excellent.
Buries it in his skull, yeah.
And just a quick boom, and it's just everything just goes silent and stops, and then that turn around, that dolly around or whatever to show the actual damage, I thought was very cool. And then again, we get a very well done Tales from the Crypt ending where Eleanor has neatly disemboweled and dismembered Arthur, putting him into nice labeled jars. Yeah.
Can't you do anything neatly? I can do it neatly.
I can do it neatly. That was a great ending.
I love it. So we're going through the jars and we're seeing little bits or piece of his brain. There's eyeball or whatever. And then there's one that was called Odds and Ends, and it was his nuts.
I didn't notice. Gosh, the comedy in this is great, and it's very subtle. Yeah. I mean, they probably shot each of these episodes in probably one day, right? I mean, they're usually like one location. I mean, outside of the Midnight Mess, which you kind of go through too. But neat job. You could have probably got that done in a day.
Yeah. Well, there are like two scenes where it's like, the husband's in there explaining like, oh yeah, I'm getting married, and then later the wife is like, yeah, I can't seem to get his system right when she's talking to her friend, and those are the only times I think we're outside of that
because she's
house
like, why
or
are
whatever.
you even wasting your time with this dick?
Yeah,
like, move on.
By the way, I love how he's like, yeah, I spent all my time amassing this fortune, and we get to his house, and it's like, it's okay,
fine.
it's like 70s.
It's a sign of how expensive things are in London.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah.
I tidied up everything after I finished. Everything in its place, and a place for everything.
All right, should we move on to This Trick'll Kill Ya?
Right.
The magician one?
The magic,
which I'm always about the magician ones.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I love magician stuff. Yeah, this was a great one as well, where a magician who's looking to
find the next new trick.
Yeah, up the ante here on his act here. He's not impressed by anything, and he's trying to search the exotic locales of India to find the next new trick, like you were saying. But nothing is exciting until all of a sudden this woman starts playing.
Well, actually, so before the setup, he's in this little bazaar.
Yeah.
And like, a guy's like performing some stuff. He's got the like, sword through the basket thing, and like, and just the sword through his cheeks or whatever. And he's like, and then our main guy is like, great, I'm gonna be Mitch Pileggi here from Breaking the Magician's Code, and just goes into
that was Mitch Pileggi.
Yeah.
Oh, he was the host of it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry.
I didn't know if he was the masked. Okay.
No.
Did they ever reveal who the masked magician was?
I don't think so, because that guy would be in trouble.
We're aging ourselves with this reference, by the way. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
He goes full Mitch Pileggi and exposes this guy in front of everybody.
Don't fucking do that, man. That's going against the code, and that's why he gets his comeuppance. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later he's wandering around the streets, finds that same magician's assistant, but she's playing a flute and this magic rope.
Snake charmer type.
Snake charmer comes up, but it's a rope instead of a snake, and it flies out of the basket up in the air, and then she climbs the rope.
It's strong enough to hold you.
Yeah, and then she tells him, "Oh, this thing's magic. It's been in my family. No, I can't sell you the trick.
It's not a trick. Yeah,
smell you later." And he's like, "Okay, well, maybe just come and perform it for my wife. She's not feeling well. Can you come to our house?"
She's gonna stand behind you while you perform it.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure that there's no strings, there's no mirrors, and then
kill you.
Yeah, I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
And then, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, he tries to wield the magic rope, and his wife gets thrown into the ceiling and then disappears.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And what happened to him is what I thought was going to happen with the rope, is that the rope was going to come over and just kill him or whatever. But with the wife, it zaps her into the nether world or something. It was
did it pull her into the rope or wherever the other side was? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mystery what happened to her, but I don't think she made it.
She probably didn't make it, and well, she at least disappears, and then it strangles the Mitch Pileggi guy. Then we go outside the window, it hangs him, right? And then we go outside the window, and that same magician, the woman who was just killed by the Mitch Pileggi guy, and the kid were all doing their routine downstairs, and she looks up to him and sees him swinging in the windowsill, which is cool, but it was a little okay, so what did he stab?
Yeah, who, what?
Who's up in the closet up there?
A little bit of some things that were unrealized, I'd say, in this in terms of story. But again, a nice one. I just find it funny that a magician would be so obsessed with a new trick. I mean, maybe at some point in time when magic was probably, the best form of entertainment that you could do.
This is the Prestige. This is the Prestige Part 1. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was funny when the obsessive magician wanted to kill somebody for their trick. But this one was good. Again, kind of a clear cut, this guy is a jerk. He's going to get his comeuppance, and it's going to be very clear how he's going to get it through the rope. But yeah, a little unsure what happened with the wife, because there was a blood pool that
pooled up on the ceiling when she disappeared.
Oh yeah.
And it was almost like, did she get sucked up real fast and just, I
don't know, but it doesn't matter, right? It's Tales from the Crypt, and it's fun.
No gods, no supernatural powers, no yoga. Just tricks.
Bargain in Death.
Oh, Bargain in Death. Wait, what is that?
This was the Buried Alive for the insurance.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Another one that was a little tough to kind of grasp onto clearly, but still a little fun. Yeah.
This one was crazy because it was he's a horror author or a paperback writer or something, right? Because he's there's no money in horror.
So he's looking for an insurance scam for some quick cash, right?
He's like, okay, you inject me with this, you collect the cash, and then I'll kill you.
But you better get me out of here because I will suffocate in here. I'm going to trust you.
Down the hall, there's 2 med students oh, geez, I wish we had more bodies to play with and we could really get ahead in this.
The Night of the Creeps guys? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We need a body.
And then there's about 400 double crosses throughout this thing, and it's each one is double crossing the next
in 12 minutes. Yeah,
and it's exactly. It's seriously, it's 9 minutes of just endless double crosses.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who's oh, I'm gonna take this thing that every doctor will think I'm dead. They'll bury me. I'll change my name. You'll collect the insurance, and we'll split it 50-50. But as he's down there, he's oh no, I'm running out of oxygen or whatever. And the med students hired the groundskeeper to come out and
just a gravedigger, to come and get him up,
get him up,
and to get a corpse for them,
right? and this one was crazy because it was like Alex or whatever, his friend, was gonna come dig him up, but like the friend was like running late, and so
he just double crossed him. I think Alex was not going to save him. He was like, no, I'm going to leave him to die. Then the doctors were like, we need to get this gravedigger to go get us a body. So they bribed this guy to go get him a body. Maitland, the guy in the coffin, wakes up, scares the shit out of those two students.
Yeah.
They run in front of a car.
They ran off like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. They're like, woo! And
yeah, and they did the exactly
a little puff of smoke or whatever.
Yeah. They crash into the car, misses them or hits them, then crashes into a tree and explodes. It's like really fucking wild what happens all of a sudden.
Well, and then the two medical students come back to see that the alive guy has been unalived by the
gravedigger.
The gravedigger. He's like, okay, do I get my money now?
He just chopped off his head. Okay, here's your body.
Yeah.
Hey, what did he care?
You can give me the money now. It's all yours. Sorry about the head.
But what was funny was, like, at the very end of this, they come back to the guys at the drinking round table, and one guy's like, preposterous story. And it's like, yep, that sums it up.
At this point, we're getting into preposterous stories. I had a dream where I was disembodied and dismembered and put into jars. Now all of a sudden, this guy,
This is the preposterous one.
So here is, I guess this one is probably my favorite from a gore and horror perspective, but Drawn and Quartered is the next one.
This is like, the guy is living in the shack from Zombie 2.
Zombie
where
2,
he's like,
exactly.
The boat can leave now.
Exactly.
Tell the crew. And like, you know, he's like, I need to get away from it all to like be able to paint and like, you know. And then it turns out his like little his painting broker, like, you know, rooked him and you know, sold his paintings for, you know, $10, and then they were sold at auction for thousands of dollars, whatever. Mm-hmm. He goes and gets some special powers from the quote unquote voodoo priest who is, you know, just sitting in the break room, you know, having a smoke there, and like, you know, he's like, yeah, I can help you.
Kind of similar to our magician story, right? This guy's looking for an edge, so he goes to that route to try to find like the edge, the next big thing, and so he basically sells his soul to this voodoo priestess to get this thing done, or voodoo priest to become an amazing artist.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he wanted exactly, but what he got was that he was able to, you know, control things through his painting. So he, you know, the loaf of bread, you know, he erased a part of it, and like the squirrel came and ate it, and then the jar, he fucked it up in the painting and it broke, and like he painted a cut on his cheek and he got one, and like he's like, aha, I've got it. And he like, you know, went and painted his buddies, and he's like, all right, guys,
perfect revenge.
So you're not going to give me my money back, right? And they're like, nope, you're screwed. Sorry, dude, it's just business.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, prepare to eat shit.
Yeah.
And one of the guy who screwed him was Denholm Elliott.
Yeah, Marcus Brody coming in being an asshole.
Yeah. It was interesting to see him play not a good guy.
Yeah, no, this was he played a very good villain, a heel, if you will. I thought that this was a really interesting one. I thought that what they did was great with each of the paintings. There was something different for each of them, where each of the people would, you know, find their fate through this painting or through this art. But what was interesting is that, you know, there's always got to be something that kind of locks you in or keeps you honest, I'd say, for these kinds of spells. So he had to paint himself a self-portrait where he, in order to make sure that, you know, he could not do any more damage other than that first cut that he painted on himself to test the system, he had to put this under lock and key.
Right, he put it in a vault.
While he was going out and having his revenge and taking out Marcus Brody and all the other guys. Then his own portrait ends up accidentally falling underneath a worker.
So this is the part I was a little confused on. So why did he have to rush home and take it out of the?
Because it would never have been covered with turpentine had he not done that. Like, it was just written in that he. I know. What is the motivation behind that move? Nothing outside of plot. Yes.
Got it. And so he puts it out, and like some Hapless worker, the skylight above him.
Turpentine, paint thinner, all drops onto this thing, and this guy is like, he's like, what's going on with me? But we do see what happens to him. He's run over by a car. But we don't get the gore until we see his painting that's covered in this turpentine, and the face is just running down. Yeah. But all we see is the cool shot of him underneath the car tire. You know, you don't see his head, so you could just imagine that he's a watermelon just crushed on the ground. I thought that was a really strong visual finish. Yeah,
that's your story.
But it seems so real, almost as if it happened.
Happened,
or could.
And then we're back. We're back to the Five Guys.
Yeah, Five Guys burgers, overpriced burgers and fries,
and the little table they're at, and the sort of marble table. The drinks disappear, or some of the coverings and stuff. And they're like, wait, what is this? And
all the niceties, all the pleasantries are gone, right? Like, it's time to move on.
The elevator doors open, and wait a minute, this is a cemetery. Oh no!
So it's kind of like they needed to relive these things over and over, and that was kind of their torture, right? Like, this is their loop that they're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone said something about how I bet we'll have to do this every single night or whatever, reliving this pain or whatever.
They did say that overtly, yeah.
And then, each one sort of wanders back into their graves or whatever, and it turns out that the place with the crystal glasses of booze or whatever was just a mausoleum.
Right.
And, that this is essentially their fate, and they're going to, do this every night. This is sort of their hell. Yeah.
And in a very Dr. Terror's ending, they all walk into their final resting place and kind of disappear into the nothingness.
That's how it is, and how it always will be. Night after night, we have to retell the evil things we did when we were alive. Night after night, for all eternity.
Maybe this one and Kwaidan, I guess if you could get an 8-year-old to sit through Kwaidan, it's like both of them could be these sort of first toe into the pool of horror or whatever type of thing.
Yeah,
I think the ending was pretty decent, but it was just the setup to the spine that was made it feel like we needed to rethink that one. We needed another pass on the script or whatever.
Yeah. It was just too linear for the dream logic that they were trying to convey, and I think with a little bit of non-linearity, they could have accepted.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the dream logic is fine, but you needed to have it be a MacGuffin that it's or have it be a red herring that it's there's some explanation for this. Yeah,
that's what I mean. It's not like we need to do the whole mechanical start wide and go close. Let's start close and where these guys are, and then all of a sudden we're in this thing. We'll and I think it would be interesting if they're looking out like they were in a building, but actually they were in a mausoleum. You know what I mean? You could have gotten a better reveal of what their exterior was if you'd have rethought that, and that would have just been a matter of taking a good exterior shot of a fun mausoleum. Even the same one they used in the first movie would have probably worked.
Right.
And it would have been a nice tie-in. Wow, are we we're remaking this movie? You know what's interesting, and I wanted to bring this up to you the last time, is that I never understood. I mean, I love Demon Knight. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a great Tales from the Crypt movie. I think it's a fun movie. I don't think it's a Tales from the Crypt, though. I think that they should have done an anthology for the films, and we're going to get into this next one now. Twilight Zone, the movie, is a really successful, big-budget anthology film, in my opinion. And I feel like when they came out with Demon Knight in the 90s, the Tales from the Crypt movie, I was like, well, where are the other stories? Why didn't we get Demon Knight plus Bordello of Blood plus one more? And then we could have gotten a very similar movie to these structurally, even if it was only 3 stories. But still, I don't understand why they went for the one.
It's just each movie would be a standalone.
No, that's how they did it. They skipped the anthology part of the anthology.
Well, I guess what it seems like they were trying to do was to do what the original concept of Halloween was going to be. Which is that each standalone movie would be its own thing, but the only connection is that it has the Tales from the Crypt branding or something.
Right.
Yeah, but it feels like it would have been great if they had kind of just gone full bore and had Demon Knight been condensed, and then the Bordello been condensed.
And I know what happened. I mean, this is clearly we're already doing that with the show. Then we're not differentiating it. It's like, well, no, you've got a production value that's different from the show when you work with the movies. Plus, you might be able to realize these movies that are small segments that were part of the TV show on a lower budget into more of a big budget and like blow them up. Like for instance, the one that they took from the first Tales from the Crypt movie with the Santa Claus psycho. Right. That's like the very first Tales from the Crypt episode for the HBO. Like they could have done kind of a reverse and maybe pulled some of these old ones from let's say Midnight Mess. That would have been your Bordello of Blood, right? Like that could have been that one segment. I don't know. I always wondered that, and I was always kind of disappointed when they only came out with the one movie.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying, because I was like, oh wow, Demon Knight plus what are the other ones? But
yeah,
it was still good. But I think that there's still a chance for Tales from the Crypt to come back in a different way. I know M. Night Shyamalan was going to run it for a bit, but he was going to try to run it without a Tales from the without a Crypt Keeper, and I said no. I said, no, M. Night, you're not going to do that. That's not the twist we need.
And he listened.
Exactly. One more thing. Drawn and Quartered, I don't know if you were familiar too much with the 90s show, but there was an episode about an artist very similar. It was a William Atherton episode, the guy from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Well, he was an art collector that wanted to work with this artist. And it was a pretty similar story, but the artist would go out and kill people and then make the art from the killings that he would make. And so that art became very interesting to William Atherton. And the way that it all kind of coalesced at the end was that this artist needed a little bit more money to pay for an operation for his mother or a friend or something. And so he does one more kill, he paints this kill, and he gives it to William Atherton. He's like, this is your best work yet, here's all the money you need, blah, blah, blah. He goes back and he finds out that the surgeon that was going to perform the surgery was the guy he killed in the art, and that's how it ends. I mean, that was I think that's a much stronger ending. Right. I like this one, and it's kind of very similar. And I thought that one was also called Drawn and Quartered, but I might be wrong. On to Twilight Zone, the movie.
Do you want to sing some songs from TV shows?
Yeah. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Yeah. I love that so much, right?
What about...
So this one starts with a pretty clear kind of a bookend. Our prologue is written and directed by John Landis, but it stars... The cameos in this movie are so great. Yeah. That starts right away with Albert Brooks and Dan Aykroyd driving in a car on some sort of a road trip, or just a men's trip, I guess. Yeah. We don't really know where they're going.
I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're kind of chatting, but... then they're just playing little games to keep themselves occupied, and they were listening to Midnight Special, CCR, and
until the tape gets eaten by the tape recorder.
Yeah. Which is why they had to do this other game, because oh no, there's nothing to listen to.
So Albert Brooks started. I mean, he really starts this off. He's like, "You want to see something scary?" And he turns off the lights as they're driving through this clearly winding mountainous road at night. It's probably not a very good thing to do. And Dan Aykroyd's getting a little nervous about all this.
Right. Which is actually, I mean, it is something, if you're ever on a country road and you can do something like that, it is really scary to do that.
Yeah, it's the worst. Don't do it to me. Yeah. I'll get the hell out of that car.
Because then I'll show you something really scary.
Imagine, oh my God, what are those gravel beds up ahead? They're going to fly up and knock out our lights. Uh-oh. Blackness. Oh my goodness. Why, there could be nuns ahead. We wouldn't even see them.
We think that these guys are friends. Obviously, Albert Brooks is kind of in charge, I'd say, throughout the entire conversation. He's the one scaring Dan Aykroyd. He's the one kind of, trying to push his buttons a little bit. Finally, Dan Aykroyd says,
"Hey, you want to see something really scary?"
You bet.
This is, of course, in a very meta way. They discuss some show that they used to watch called The Twilight Zone that they loved. They loved 60s television as well together. So as they're discussing this, Dan Aykroyd says, do you want to see something really scary? And Albert Brooks is like, absolutely. He goes, pull over. Okay, pull over. And then something happens to Dan Aykroyd where he transforms into a monster and basically shakes Albert Brooks for a little bit before we cut away. But that's the start of this, and it very much is a I don't know if that's very much a Twilight Zone opening by any means. I mean, I think that they're a little bit more social focused when it comes to Twilight Zones and their openers, but this was a nice way to kind of get in and to show you that they're going to be, flipping the script on some of these anthology stories. But also we get our first sound of Burgess Meredith as the narrator instead of Rod Serling.
Yeah, which I think they mentioned his episode, while they were reminiscing about, you ever watch that old TV show, The Twilight Zone? And then he does all the VO intros for all of the...
Oh, man, it's so good.
All the different segments in this.
Good choice.
The Twilight Zone.
I guess we should also say this one is a little different than the previous movies in this episode, which is like all those other ones where, had a single director. This one breaks up each segment, and it's, directed by John Landis, Steven Spielberg, Joe Dante, and then George Miller. Pretty huge powerhouses at that time, especially like really riding high, top of their career type of things. But when was Gremlins? 84. Okay, so this is before Gremlins then. Okay, so
yeah,
so
but Dante was riding high off of Piranha, I guess.
Piranha, Howling. I guess the Howling caught Spielberg's attention, I think. No, Piranha, because
Piranha.
He did like Piranha and was like, the studio was giving Roger Corman a bunch of shit because Piranha was going to come out around the time of Jaws 2, and Spielberg was like, no, that's great. Just let it ride.
Because they're both great, and they're both great in their own way, and Spielberg's smart enough to see that.
Yeah. Well, and then, I guess Dante got in the Spielberg orbit, I guess, because of that kind of a thing. But anyway, so, everyone's sort of riding high at this point. They've got these hot directors doing this movie, and each kind of thing has its own sort of distinct feel and milieu, which I guess, again, kind of separates it from the other films in this block, which is like where it was all one voice. Also, I think this is probably the least connected of the tales. Like, Kwaidan feels disconnected until you get to the very last one, where, we kind of learn that there's this writer kind of compiling these old tales together, and essentially that's what we've been seeing, is like, oh, it's this guy's collected works or whatever. And Vault of Horror, obviously there's a spine, but this one, like, they do have bookends with Dan Aykroyd, but like, nothing's connected.
No, and technically that last bookend is the end of the final segment with John Lithgow getting taken away.
It's kind of just a callback to the non sequitur prologue thing.
You're about to meet an angry man, Mr. William Connor, who carries on his shoulder a chip the size of the national debt. Mr. William Connor, whose own blind hatred is about to catapult him into the darkest corner of the Twilight Zone.
So let's get into the first segment here. Time Out with Vic Morrow, R.I.P.
Yeah, that's the last thing he ever did was the Twilight Zone movie. There's a reason for that.
This is the last thing that Vic Morrow ever did, yes. But this one is about an absolute bigot. I've never seen a more racist or heard a more racist person who was just passed up for I believe a promotion at work by some of the Jewish people at work. They get all the good stuff, as he puts it.
Mm-hmm. And they're all rich, and they're all, he's got all these like things.
He's a little outspoken about this in probably the wrong bar setting, because he also has not so nice things to say about the black community, as a nearby table sitting next to them is full of black men that would absolutely destroy this guy,
including the guy who is Mr. X from the X-Files.
Yeah. This is a situation where you're definitely set up with this character who is a nasty person. Yeah. This person is in a bar and is kicked out of this bar because everyone's like, no, we don't want your shit here. Everyone's trying to enjoy their happy hour drinks here on a Friday night after work. Get the fuck out of the bar.
Even his friends. I mean,
they're just like, dude, get the fuck out of here.
It was like, there's one guy and then the other guy was like from The Thing. And, they're both like really embarrassed to go, sorry about our buddy.
He's the head guy.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's kind of important story-wise. He goes through these. He hates black people. He hates Jews, and he hates Asians or whatever.
He hates everybody that's not white. Yeah,
and goes through a litany of racist reasons why, and then he leaves the bar to find himself.
Now here's where it gets Twilight Zone, right? You leave one place and you enter another place completely, and that's that weird dream lot. You're actually entering the Twilight Zone, right?
Right.
And so by exiting this bar as a massive bigot, he enters Nazi-occupied France as a Jew being hunted by the Nazis.
Right. It's quantum leap.
It's absolutely quantum leap. However, instead
logic.
of being the hero that Sam Beckett's going to be, this guy becomes the target of every racist group in each of these time periods. So, at first he's a Jew in France. The next time he becomes a Viet Cong in Vietnam. I believe that's the next one.
I think so. Well, it does kind of get pretty mixed up. No, I think the next one is that. Anyway, he's getting chased by the KKK, and
I'm sorry. Yes, he's lynched. He's absolutely.
He's like, no, I'm white.
Yeah, he's like, no, and then John Larroquette coming through with some language, huh? But John Larroquette comes in playing it. I mean, it's a Klan meeting where they're going to hang a person, and he is the person that's going to be hung. So he's thrown into that. He gets away from that. He ends up in Vietnam, where he is the enemy. He gets almost blown up by U.S. soldiers, which then tosses him back into Nazi-occupied France, where he's taken away, which we think on a bus to a concentration, or a truck to a concentration camp,
like
with
a freight car. Yeah.
He's on a train. Yes, thank you. A freight car to a concentration camp, where he can see his buddy from The Thing and his other buddy, but they can't hear him. It's a very chilling ending where he's screaming, "It's me! You gotta help me!" And no one can hear him, and they just see him, and he can see the other side, like the real zone as opposed to the Twilight Zone, if you will, through that veil.
Right. But they can't see him. Yeah, exactly.
So now, obviously, this episode has a lot of controversy around it because Vic Morrow and 2 children were actually killed during the making of it. There was another scene in Vietnam where there was a helicopter chasing them. Unfortunately, in real life, there was an accident that killed all 3 of them instantly. But I think John Landis went through some heavy courtroom drama after this for a while, but ultimately was let off on, I think, nothing. I don't think anybody got in trouble for this, is how that ended up.
No, well, yeah, he. It's funny. I'd heard this story before, and I looked it up again to see what it was, and yeah. So the manslaughter case, I guess they did get off on that one because apparently there were some things that was like not let into evidence, and then there's some things where it was just it seemed like they didn't prosecute that one very well. And anyway, all the sort of negligence and all the like things that led into the death, which were like a lot of irresponsibility and things coming from Landis, by the way. It was like all the child labor laws they broke to do this thing, the sort of like the under the table contracts to do these things, the like pushing the helicopter guy to do things that were unsafe. They're like, oh, that explosion's not big enough. You need to make it bigger. And like that, hit that rotor, and then the thing was unstable. And then what happened was the helicopter dipped down, sliced off Vic Morrow and one of the kids' heads, and then crushed the other kid. So there were 3 of them that sort of died instantly through this thing.
There is video of it too. You can find online from the trial. Yeah, it's awful.
Oh, of the trial. Not of the crash.
There's video of the trial, but during that trial video, they show the video.
Oh,
and
jeez.
I guess during that trial, they showed it over and over and over as it was evidence, right? So you need to make that point as a lawyer, and that made a point.
Yeah. Anyway, from all the like negligence and things, and all the pushing to break the rules and doing all the corner cutting or whatever that sort of led to this thing, it's like, yes, it wasn't an intentional act that was supposed to happen this way, but all the
could have been avoided.
Disregard could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Had a lot of those things been followed. And then, so anyway, that trial, Landis got off, and then he was sued by Vic Morrow's daughters, Jennifer Jason Leigh and Carrie Morrow,
Carrie Ann Morrow,
and then the sort of the family of the two kids as well, and yeah, so the civil trial,
it's like OJ.
Yeah, it is essentially that, where it's like
you're guilty on the civil side of murder, but you are not guilty of the civil side of the criminal side of murder. Oh,
got let off on the criminal side, and he Landis apparently was heard weeks later joking that, yep, we're all going to jail for this one, and he fully should have, based on what happened.
But it sucks. It sucks that his career just tanked after that too, Landis. He only had like 7 great movies after that just destroyed at the box office.
Yeah. Well, and apparently a lot of that had to do with Eddie Murphy fighting for him to come back and do Coming to America. But Landis, that is, like, talks about how his career tanked, and then this ruined his relationship with Spielberg. Like, Spielberg was like, what the hell, like Spielberg also saw Landis as at fault, and so it was pretty horrifying. That, like, the whole thing is pretty nuts. That and especially that it was it's the megalomaniacal thing where it's like you're not taking safety into consideration. You just want that big spectacular shot. He's like, oh, I want it to look like Apocalypse Now, or whatever he was shouting on set, and some haunting thing was that Morrow was like, I'm crazy. I should have done this with the stunt doubles. Like I think the last thing he said to his daughter, Jennifer Jason Leigh, supposedly on a phone call before they shot this thing at 2 a.m. at Indian Dunes or wherever that was. So anyway, yeah, pretty horrifying, and it I think still kind of hangs over as kind of a pall on this movie. Because it is so associated with it in people's minds, and like, frankly, this episode, like, just wasn't that great. I mean, on top of the insult to injury, I guess you can see what they're going for, but and perhaps it would have been played a little differently had the production not ended so suddenly with I
feel like it did need a big set piece to try to, like, close things off here, especially because it kind of leads up to, like, even more ramping of action and event, things, and it just doesn't get there. But yeah, for a reason that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so let's get on to segment 2.
Yeah.
Kick the can. A little bit more lighthearted of a segment, I'd say, than the first one here. Let's try to turn this one around here.
Well, it was very lighthearted. It felt like, I mean, I know that this is based on an episode that they did, but like, it didn't even feel like at least the most memorable Twilight Zone episodes, which is like sort of what
It's a Good Life,
Time Out, Good Life, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Mm-hmm. All those had this emphasis on the horror, or like it's either persecution or a comeuppance type of thing, and this one didn't have either of those, and was more about the sort of the wonder or whatever. And this it has Scatman Crothers as this sort of magical character,
Mr. Bloom,
wandering from old folks home to old folks home, apparently recreating this scenario, or like getting people to sort of
just
believe
giving them
them.
another night, right? Giving them one more night to be a kid and to be youthful.
Yeah.
So what the hell is Bloom? This very much feels Stephen King-ish to me, where that mysterious person comes into town and they are godlike, and he has those kinds of powers where he's something different,
No, totally. He takes this like sleepy old rest home, and he's like, oh, I used to love to play this game when I was a kid. What about you? Did you like to do something when you were young? What about you? And like, getting everyone to sort of reminisce, because I think what kind of kicked it off was like some son and daughter-in-law were like, how about next week, Pop? Why don't you go back into that house and rot?
Didn't that hurt your feelings?
Yeah. Yes. It was,
maybe next week. And he's got his bags all packed, ready to go.
Maybe next week. Maybe never. Yeah. It was Eeyore Grandpa. This is like the third time the third time this has happened, apparently, or in a row or something, where
he was kind of a dick to people, and I get it. Mr. Conroy, that's who that was. He's kind of a dick. They could have brought him home for a weekend, man. The guy's like in his 90s.
Yeah.
Come on.
You said maybe this week I could come visit.
I wish you could, Pop, but it's bad timing this week.
We really have to be going now.
I understand.
Maybe next week, Pop.
But what he actually needed was the catalyst of Mr. Bloom to get him to be less of a dick, I guess.
Yeah, and so he could himself kick the can. And what Mr. Bloom proposes to the group of people that are willing to participate and listen and to be open-minded about it is that, hey, at midnight or whatever, at nightfall, we're going to play Kick the Can together. Come join me. And when they come to join him to play a game of Kick the Can in his extremely shiny silver can that he's got that he always shines up as he's talking to them, they all become children again, or at least an age that they wanted to become again. And some of them are a little older, some of them are a little younger, but some of them are in that age that they feel like just right, it feels. And some of them don't want to be young again. They had amazing lives that they lived. They had families, they had daughters, they had grandkids, and they don't want to lose all that, so they want to go back. And he kind of helps to see that, or it helps them to see and to shape that, like, life isn't so bad, right? Like, we can still be active, we could still be energetic, even though we're old. Like, let's not let age get in the way. However, one of those people decide not to go back.
Yeah.
He wants to stay a kid.
Here's the Peter Pan. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got his ascot on and everything, and he's going to go be young again. I thought that was cool. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it really feels like it's something out of a different movie. And
I think these first two feel like they're on their own. Yeah.
I agree. And I think, it's one of those things where if I was just sitting down to watch this again, I would watch the prologue, skip segments 1 and 2, and go straight to segment 3.
I agree. And that's a Spielberg segment we're talking about here that we're just like, that could have worked on Amazing Stories.
Right. That's what it was. It felt like Amazing Stories. Yeah.
But it probably wouldn't be a Twilight Zone, Like, that was his kind of intro into, I'm going to do an anthology series, and this is the kind of programming you'll see from mine. A little bit more whimsy, a little bit more positive, but okay, we got it. So old people go young, blah blah blah. Mr. Bloom goes on to the next one. Now let's get into it. It's a Good Life, Joe Dante's segment. Unless you had something else to say about the Kick.
No, not really. It was just that Kick the Can was one of those ones where it was like it felt like, okay, this is the perfect one for Spielberg to do, because you get the magic, the wonder, like you get something that like the magical version of Twilight Zone versus the
horror,
playful horror
and the social commentary.
And the social commentary.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely still social commentary in this about
for sure.
You throw the old people away.
Totally.
When they get to a certain age.
Ageism and for sure.
And it's all that is pretty great. And it's just like there's something about like the magic and the kids part of it. It was like this felt like the rough draft for Hook. Yeah. Of like, Robin Williams, being old, and then
the Tally-Ho kid for sure, right? He was
exactly
One of the lost boys.
Finding his inner child again, and all that was done so much better in Hook. And this one, it just like it had that rough draft feel to it, where it's like it wasn't quite as refined. But it's always great seeing Scatman Carruthers and that whole thing. He was kind of the guiding light on this one.
I found out long time ago I wanted to be my own true age.
Yeah, this is probably one, like I said, when I come back to the Twilight Zone the movie, segments 1 and 2, Time Out and Kick the Can will probably be skipped over those chapters.
Segments 3 and 4, I mean, I know I put this in a text before, but they stomp the living shit out of the first two. Like, when we get into It's a Good Life, from the get-go, it is an amazing Twilight Zone episode. It is. Yeah. It starts out with that Burgess Meredith, and this is Helen, or whatever her name is. She's Helen Foley. She's a mild-mannered school teacher. She's just kind of on her way to find a new life. Blah, blah. And it's that setup. You could tell Dante and Miller, but Dante really understood the source material and delivered that. Like an updated version of what it was. And that's really what this movie was supposed to be, right? Was an updated, big production version of that show. And I think he understood the assignment in this episode.
Yeah, he certainly did.
This took an episode that we were familiar with.
Yeah.
Dante understood what he was supposed to do. He has, his classic Dante people in there, with Dick Miller and that sort of.
Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, Kevin McCarthy is so amazing as the crazy ass uncle in this.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's about a story that a kid who basically has any wish that he wants can make come true, and he creates kind of a small microcosm around him of family, or at least like of normalcy. I mean, it's so surreal and so not normal, but he thinks it is, and this person, Helen Foley, comes in and as an outsider sees what this kid's doing and tries to set him straight, more or less, but we see the antics of what's happening through Uncle Walt and through the sister with no mouth and through all this shit, like this kid has created quite literally a hell for everyone around him, but it's like a paradise for himself. And I thought that was a really good juxtaposition.
Yeah, no, and what was funny was, so we start off in this little diner when Kathleen Quinlan, the Helen character, is just starting to get to town or something, and that's where she meets little kid playing the video games, and Dick Miller hitting on her or whatever, and then Billy Mummy down the counter there, and there's like this thing where the kid's playing a video game, and every time he's playing the video game, it cuts out the TV or whatever, the boxing match or whatever they're watching. And I it's been a while since I'd seen this one, and I was like, yeah, I didn't remember that, like, oh, that was the same kid, because and was the idea that he was still using some funky powers there to make some of that happen?
Always. I think at any time something wasn't going his way and something would get screwed up somehow, he was always manipulating something. I thought that's the hint you were getting.
But unlike the people trapped in the Beetlejuice house later on, the people in the diner are not aware that he has these powers, right?
Not that I know of, no. Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like that guy would go up and confront him if he knew that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the family, that he's kind of, which, again, this kid, when Kathleen Quinlan ends up driving this kid home after she accidentally hits him with her car, so she feels bad.
Which is like, it was filmed in like this hilarious way. I was like, oh my God.
Just smashes this kid.
Just destroys him.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then you kind of like go into knowing this story where this kid is kind of manipulating people around him, that you feel like maybe that was his plan all along, was to get this person to come with, and maybe this is kind of his shtick to get people to go.
Well, no, because well, at least what he says anyway is that, like, because she stood up for him when that guy was starting to bully him in the diner, and then so he was like, oh, I want you as a new friend or whatever.
That's what I think. I think that there might be a little bit of a con going on with this kid.
Yeah.
And he shows up in a place where he knows that he'll intersect with someone, create some sort of situation where they'll have to either stick up for him or he'll be introduced to them. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, this happened. You just hit me with my car, or with your car. Now take me to my house. And that's kind of how he's got Kevin McCarthy and Patricia Barry and like all the father, the
Nancy
mother
Cartwright,
figure.
yeah.
But none of those people are his family. None of them. He is like this entity kind of thing, but he's been pulling people in as like this normalcy around him. Like, this is my uncle. Well, he's not. He's just some dude you met at the last diner you were at.
Yeah,
you took him home, right? Yeah.
I bet your parents are worried about you.
Not really.
No?
Today's my birthday. They don't even care about that.
Really? Wow. What a crummy birthday.
It's okay. I made a friend.
Me too.
As we find out, there's something different about the Kathleen Quinlan character, and we get that in the sense that, like, when they get to the house, we find Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Cartwright's in there, just like they are actors waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
Bored watching TV, and then as soon as they get there, he's like, "Oh, hey, it's you!
They're on
hey."
immediately.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony! Oh, wow!
Yeah. Oh, you're home.
Yeah.
A new friend.
the like sense of like the turmoil roiling beneath everything, and like the staged, managed version of life that they're living. is so well portrayed in this one, because you don't know what's happening, like, but there's something weird about the way they're all acting, and like, they're all acting polite, okay, because some strangers here, and like, okay, is that part of it? But like, no, there's actually a little extra on top of that, and it's because they're all terrified of what Anthony will do to them. And we see a little preview of that when he's like, oh, that's my other sister or whatever. She doesn't she was in an accident. And then we boom up from the TV she's watching, and it turns out she has no mouth or nose. It was just like a complete blank.
That was his punishment.
It was like the Dick Tracy blank face type of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was his punishment to her, or her punishment was to remove her face, pretty much, remove her mouth.
Remove her mouth. It really reminded me of that Harlan Ellison short story, the "I have no mouth and must scream" type of thing. It's like, these humans are being toyed with by this AI, and it's like their plaything, and then essentially the way it works at the end is like that, one human helps the other two like escape by killing themselves, and like the third one, the AI doesn't let kill himself, and instead removes his mouth, and now he's got no mouth and must scream, taking us back to the Tingler. But anyway, I thought that was a really cool perhaps nod to that in with the that's my other sister story.
That's Sarah, my other sister. She was in an accident.
But yeah, and then we get dinner. The dinner scene. Kathleen Quinlan is the one who is like, you eat like this every night? Is it only because it's your birthday?
I wanted to bring that up. The dinner scene is really kind of the reveal of what is actually happening. There's no way a family that's in their right mind would ever feed their kid ice cream, candy apples, potato chips, hamburgers with peanut butter.
Yeah.
It's good that way.
It's good that way.
But there's no way that would happen, right? Like on a Tuesday night. You might get that on like a Friday night or something special, or whatever. But as like a family would never do that. And I think that this right there is the exact little moment where you find out that Anthony is completely in charge. The entire meal is what a kid would put together, and everyone eats it. Not just Anthony. Everyone has that with the cup of ice cream. Yeah, and they're just like pounding burgers and ice cream. It's like disgusting, And the way that Kevin McCarthy's like eating potato chips and it's kind of like dropping out of his mouth. He's like, I don't want to eat this anymore. Like you could really tell they were being tortured just as much as anyone else. But then we get more into how Anthony's kind of controlling and manipulating everything, and has Uncle Walt do a magic show. Uncle Walt is not a magician, and you know this from the get-go. He's like, so I guess I pulled something out of something? And as he's going through like the motions of the magic trick, Anthony's kind of giving him items from the ether, if you will. He's got a hat. All of a sudden now he's got a rabbit that he can pull out. The rabbit becomes a monster, straight out of the cartoons.
Is pretty intense.
And everything ramps up to the end where it becomes quite a bit of, and this is in very Dante style, a Looney Tunes kind of ending.
Yeah, right.
To the point where you actually get the Tasmanian devil comes out of the thing, spinning out of the TV.
Yeah, but it looks like Ratfink when it gets there.
Yeah, when it... it's got that tongue sticking out. Yeah. But then there's like the cartoon dragon that comes out, and like that weird like eyeball thing that like is like dancing around. I mean, it is so Beetlejuice, like you said, but way before Beetlejuice. Like we're talking.
This is true. Yeah.
So this is 6 years before Beetlejuice came out. And Dante was already pulling the really cool effect of the kind of the cartoony TV breaking in half. But it was a really jagged edge on either side, like it was clean. Just strong images. Like, it was really made by a kid. Like, that's how I felt this whole thing was like, it's horror made by a kid.
Yeah.
This is a great one. I think the next one is probably, like, on a scary level is much scarier. This one is perfect.
Yeah.
Like, from start to finish. Even the ending is strong.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is like, the ending itself is great, too, because, like, as we've been setting up, like, that, okay, so she's this teacher. She, scolds him about the like you eat like this, and like and he's like, well, wait a minute, no one ever tells me.
No one talks to me like that. Yeah,
no one tells me like this. And then they're in this sort of nether world.
And he makes everything go away. He's like, I want nothing then. And he makes it, they're in nothing.
It's sort of like, fog and black
and
space.
Their images are kind of playing after another, like they filmed it twice. Such a cool effect. Oh.
Yeah. And so she's like, listen, you, whatever, don't want to hear this, but I'm going to, set down some rules for you and you'll feel a lot better. And he's like, oh, great. And, so essentially, like, she kind of wins him over with some tough love and
parenting.
Yeah. And the thing that these other strangers weren't doing to him.
Yeah.
I guess for her, from her side of things, it was like, well, from her perspective, it was like, hey, if I don't do this, then, what's the point? I'm going to be stuck like these bozos. And,
right.
So she goes for it and gets him to agree to chill out. And he does. And they're like, okay, great. Well, I'll be your teacher and you'll learn some stuff and grow up.
Yeah, and what's nice is that, like, even though she was kind of trying to steer him away from using that magic power that he's got for terrible reasons, like
for ill
reasons, still, when she couldn't find the keys to her car, they were mysteriously right here. And Anthony might have done that, and he's like, okay, maybe we'll keep that to a minimum. And then that was the end. It was a really nice moment, and it kind of had the Terminator sunset drive away at the end there too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but also like the
flowers,
dead landscape kind of bloomed to life as they
come on, Dante, as if like you have a great episode and then you're going to finish it with that imagery, that beautiful imagery. It's like, dude, like you just took this into the stratosphere. I love this episode so much. This to me, the next one, obviously, but this one to me screams this movie. When I think of Twilight Zone, it's that scene of Kevin McCarthy with that big rabbit creature coming out of the hat. Like that's what I see.
That thing,
so awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I thought.
All right, let's go on to Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And
yeah, so this one, I had totally forgotten that George Miller directed this one.
Me too.
And
it feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Energetic as fuck.
And while I was watching, I was like, geez, why? Because like, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, it's a story that everybody knows. It's like, the guy who, like, is kind of freaking out on the plane. He thinks that
William Shatner.
That a monster is tearing apart the wing of the plane. Well, William
There's
Shatner
something
did
on the wing.
So, and it's like parodied, multiple times ever since.
Yeah.
And, the thing on the wing is a gremlin. And I was like, well, why didn't they get Joe Dante to do that one? And it's like, well, this is also pre-Gremlins. So it's, that it kind of struck me as we were talking today about that. Okay. But, it was also really interesting to see the George Miller hideous gremlin creature.
What you're looking at could be the end of a particularly terrifying nightmare. It isn't. It's the beginning.
John Lithgow playing this, I don't know what, he's an insurance guy he was like, he knows too many of the like, this is how this could kill you, and this is how this could kill you, and statistically you died this way, and like, so he's already kind of freaking out.
He's got to be an underwriter in that case, right? Like he knows all the percentages. Yeah.
He gets led back to his seat, immediately starts freaking out. They go through a couple of different series of trying to calm him down, and he's like, yeah, you know what? How could something be out there? He's like, oh, a mechanic was on the wing and then it's flying. It's like, yeah, but it's too fast. The air pressure, like the temperature. He's like, yeah, what was I thinking? And he like takes his pill and like chills out, looks back out on the wing, and it gets even crazier out there with the thing like just going nuts, like blowing apart the wing.
There's that one scene, so when Lithgow looks out the window, you can just barely make out, the very first time, you could just barely make out a silhouette of something out there.
Right.
And then it starts to move, and that's when he kind of has that first, like, hey, he doesn't say it as calmly as this, but he's like, hey, there's somebody on the wing, in very John Lithgow style, just delivers a performance.
Just to let everyone know, there's someone out there.
He is so damn good in this episode. And then obviously the camera work is fantastic in the direction. But when he sees that gremlin for the first time, you don't really see it. But then when we see it again, it gets a nice display of lightning. And so we get the full reveal of what this thing is as it like reaches back and destroys the engine and just puts its hand through the engine.
Right.
And like you were saying, this is a gremlin. So this is like based on World War II stories of gremlins screwing with Allies' equipment, right? So it was like planes and tanks and trucks and things like that. All of a sudden,
break down for no
they would
reason.
break down for no real reason, and there were things like, I mean, there were gremlins that they were talking about. There were Foo Fighters that they were talking about. There was a lot of, mysterious things that were, in addition to our enemy, were also attacking us. And so that's where all this came from. And this being another Richard Matheson story, it really delivers the horror in all of this, in that it's almost as if the gremlin is not just fucking with the plane, because that's its main goal, is just to destroy the plane. They're just destructive things for some reason, or they eat gears. I don't know what it actually is motivation is. But it's not only to destroy this plane and screw up all these people in this mechanical plane, but also to fuck with this guy by the end. Because by the end of it, it's disappearing and reappearing so that he's the only one that can see it. And by the end, when Lithgow finally takes a gun, blows a hole out of the plane to try to get this thing, shoots it through a window, it actually kind of shows up next to him and touches his face and says, "You got me." And he gives him a little finger in the face.
Yeah.
What a cool personality that they gave this creature, right? You could tell that was kind of the origin, or like the birth of Gremlins, of the actual movie, when they kind of dove more deep into, because they weren't just monsters in that movie. They all had their own individual personalities, and that was what made it cool. And this thing definitely had when it just gives him that waggle of the finger at the end, and that the music, oh man, it's so good.
Yeah. Well, the escalation of the events got really, really intense toward the end there. What you're talking about, and that was great because then the gremlin just kind of flies up into the atmosphere or whatever and disappears. Because it
turns into like a ball, right? Almost like a balloon flying up into the sky.
Yeah.
It just bounces into the clouds. It's so
right,
cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that was was brought to life so well because it was like, what is this thing? And it gives you a sense of that because it's just based on the mischief it can cause.
Yeah.
Rather than
mayhem.
It has some particular goal in mind or whatever.
Yeah, it's like kind of Loki-ish, right? Just kind of chaos, havoc, just creating a mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
No real goal.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That makes it scary.
Exactly. They luckily just landed the plane just in time.
But what about that guy's response? That one ground worker, when he sees it, he's like, "Holy Toledo!" or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And he exactly. There's that thing where it's like, oh, is this all in this guy's head? And they've got him straight jacketed and they're throwing him into an ambulance. And then we go and see the wreckage of the plane, and oh boy, it was torn to shreds. It's the miracle they landed.
Looks like the size of a handprint, giant handprint too, just ripped out of the side of the plane.
Well, and what's funny is that period where things start really ramping up is where you start seeing a lot of the George Miller style, where it's just the frenetic, push-ins and the cutting and and things get nuts. But also the older couple sitting behind John Lithgow,
I saw him too. Don't humor him. How we gotta humor these kinds of people.
She was dressed up like this jazzercise granny or whatever.
She was exercising, yeah.
And she looked like the sort of jazzercise character out of Road Warrior, who had the exact same outfit and hairband. And then right when John Lithgow leaves the bathroom and starts to walk up the aisle, we see these wasteland punks sitting in the sort of the back seat over there.
Oh, so I didn't notice.
We get the George Miller extended universe out there. And then on top of that, not that last time that you're talking about where he breaks through the window, but the sort of second big scare where John Lithgow looks out the window, sees the gremlin's up close, and then we see John Lithgow's eyes bug out. It looks like essentially he's got the large Marge eyes thing, which is exactly what happened in Mad Max 1 with Toe Cutter.
Right before he gets hit by the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Miller in this one. And I think that you brought it up earlier, is that each of these segments feel so different from each other. I mean, whether or not that works for the overall piece, I don't know, because maybe those are too different or disparate feels.
Yeah, they're on two different frequencies type of thing.
Exactly, but
to
I think,
work as a whole. But
I think these two go together great. When you go from Anthony, the killer wish kid, to Gremlin on the plane with John Lithgow, you've got really two strong stories here that really feel like they're in the same, or could exist in the same supernatural world.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this one, I think it still had a sense of humor to it. The Dante one had a lot more humor in it, but this one had a lot more of a hard edge to it too. But it's like, but they're complementary in that sense. These last two.
But then this one, and we should talk about the ending of this one when Lithgow is wheeled off. This is kind of the close of the film, where we are back to our prologue, or I guess this would be epilogue in this scene. But we're back to that Dan Aykroyd cameo. No Albert Brooks this time. I guess the blue creature ate him at the beginning.
Exactly.
But Aykroyd comes back. He ends up, we don't get introduced him right away, but we hear his voice, and he's the ambulance driver taking Lithgow to the ambulance.
Had a pretty big scare up there, didn't you, buddy?
Yeah, we get a familiar song on the radio, too.
Yeah.
And Lithgow makes a comment to it. It's the same song we hear from the beginning.
Oh, I love CCR.
Do you want to see something really scary?
Yeah.
So that's the end of the movie. We end it kind of the same way that we started it. But this is when we don't get Burgess Meredith. We get the original Rod Serling giving the outro to Twilight Zone. Again, like as a whole, like package, I think they did a really nice job of packaging this movie up. I think there are two really solid short films in there. Along with the prologue, I think it's fun, although I think it feels more Night Gallery than it does Twilight Zone. That was more monsters and aliens and such. But I still think it was a great one. I think that this is going to be going down as like one of my favorite anthology films, and it really is only because Dante and Miller just take these to new heights. These are two of the strongest short anthology films of all time, by far. They're so good.
Exactly. They're really great, and like the place we start in, the thing we build to, and the place we end it are all so strong in those last two.
You're right. It's prologue, skip to 3 to 4, and then the epilogue. Yeah. I mean, that really makes a good movie. And what do you got, an hour? I mean, you're probably in and out in about an hour.
Yeah. If you're short on time, that's the way to enjoy this one. The other two felt like, baby's first horror movies. You kind of like an introduction to horror. I think this one too is also in that world. Now, I think it has entertainment value for adults as well, but it is one of those things where it's like you could also show it to a kid and like and not be too gross, too intense, too.
There's no gore.
Like awful, like no one, maybe except for the Vic Morrow character, is like too like despicable. So you kind of get this thing where it's funny that this one ended up being kind of like almost the kids anthology horror block. It's a little, are you afraid of the dark? Almost Goosebumps
I mean,
level.
It's a PG movie, but that doesn't say much in '83. I mean, PG movies were quite rough back then.
Yeah, well, what wasn't Gremlins 1 PG or something, or
Gremlins
G? Or...
is PG. Temple of Doom is PG.
Yeah.
I think those movies were like the reasons. I think Red Dawn was the first PG-13 film, and that was when they made the switch over. But I think Temple of Doom and Gremlins were the reason they made the switch over. Like the catalyst to do such.
And that's exactly how it happened. I'm practically a hero. Would you believe that?
Well, I think we've come to it, Jeremy. We've done it. Another anthology in the books.
We got it. Yeah, our fifth one. This is probably our longest running series here, and it's great that we got into it again for Shocktoberfest 2024.
Yes. So stay tuned, listeners, for some more Shocktober entries. We'll be getting into some more groups of films. We've got some special guests coming. We've got a really cool block of scary ghost kids that are coming up that I'm really excited to talk about. Yeah. And then we're bringing our man Joe Dante's movie. I wish we could bring him actually on to the show, but we're bringing another one of his movies on, one of his werewolf films. So this should be fun. I'm really excited about this month, and I'm really excited to get into October the right way. With the whole family obstacles getting in the way in the last couple of years, it is hard to actually get these in, but I think we can actually get a full 4 episodes in this month.
We're doing it.
October, yeah.
Making it happen.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on any podcast platform and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
You cheated me. You were all in it together.
That's the way of the world. You buy cheap, you sell dear.
No. You cheated me, all 3 of you. And I'm going to have revenge.